Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we simplify the complexities of your leadership journey. My name is Mo, and I'll be sitting in the host chair today because I have a very special guest with me. Ben Perreau is the founder and CEO of Parafoil, where he's building leadership intelligence, applying AI and cognitive science to help managers become exceptional leaders. He spent nearly a decade at SY Partners, the leadership and transformation firm founded by Steve Jobs' former advisors, where he partnered with Fortune 50 executives and lead meaningful change. Earlier in his career, Ben held leadership roles at Sky, the BBC, and NME.com, guiding teams through two of the most disruptive shifts in modern work: the digital transformation of the newsroom and the reinvention of the music industry. Parafoil draws on that journey, combining strategic clarity, behavioral insight, and product craft to support the real, everyday practice of leadership in a new era of uncertainty. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mo. It's great to be here. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about leadership in the digital world, but before we do that, why don't you give my audience a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and how you found yourself where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I started my career as a music journalist, of all things. Many years ago, led a team to build the world's biggest music website, and realized along the way that I was a better product manager than maybe I was a journalist. And so spent a lot of time working in news. I worked in the newsroom at BBC and at Sky TV. And then later on, I led digital for Global Radio, which is Europe's biggest audio broadcaster. And then along the way, I found myself working for this fascinating, interesting firm called SY Partners, which is the strategy firm that was started by, I guess you could say, Steve Jobs' personal staff, really early Apple people. And I learned a lot about working with really great leaders, and was lucky enough to work alongside many of the C-suite at Fortune 50 companies like AT&T, Meta, Google, JP Morgan Chase and Co. So many organizations that spend a lot of time honing and really refining the quality of their leadership. But I realized that change at that C-suite level is much easier when you can have face-to-face contact with people who get lots and lots of attention and time. But what does it take to create great leaders early in the career? And so that's the journey I'm on now, trying to figure out how we can try and empower and support people who have chosen to take the path to leadership early in their journey, and how we can do that best.
Yeah, as someone who's led teams across media, tech, product, things like that, what is your core leadership philosophy today?
Yeah. Leadership for me is about understanding the people that you're working with and knowing that each one of them is an individual with their own story and their own narrative and their own things that they showed up to work with today. And they may be different from the things they showed up with yesterday. And the hard work of leadership is trying to develop cohesion within that group to the extent where everybody is individual and recognized for their own skills and background and disciplines and stories. But you can work on something together that's greater than the sum of its parts. And I think how you do that each day is what the act of leadership is. And so I spend a lot of time trying to understand how to do that better. And so for me, the core philosophy, I suppose, that's at the heart of that is understanding and recognizing who each of those individual people is and are to the extent that
You've worked in some big companies, several fast-paced, disruptive environments. So what leadership lessons did you learn early on in your journey that helped you to scale in your own journey and now help others do the same?
Yeah, I started leading people when I was 24, and I was terrible at it when I first started. I don't know if everybody else has this experience, but in arriving and encountering at this new job, which is completely different from the job you had before. You're doing this technical job, whatever it is. I was a journalist, but whatever it is, you're doing this job, which is much more technically oriented as an individual contributor. And then you make this transition that's supposed to be small because the organization has decided they want to pay you more or they want to keep you. The profound shift that you make in that day from being an IC to being a leader, to being somebody who's choosing to kind of lead people is so different. And I, at 24, was not really somebody who was asking for help. And I wasn't really somebody who was looking for support, partnership, and feedback from my peers, superiors, subordinates, everyone really. I wasn't really looking for the feedback I needed to be able to grow. And so I wasn't really learning at the rate at which I could. And so I think that the thing that's really helped me the most is learning to ask for feedback and realize I haven't necessarily got it all right. And, that goes up and down the career chain. Like, I've been lucky enough to work for C-suite leaders at very, very big and successful companies, people who have had fantastic careers, really smart, and also work in early stage startups. And it's common, that experience of being over your skis and not knowing whether you can ask for help is the same. It never changes. And even in C-suite leaders who have worked at giant, 50, 60,000 person organizations, as in those are their teams, they're still wondering, am I doing the right stuff? Am I to the right stakeholders? Have I got the right organizational mix here? Are we working on the right things? Am I coming across? How am I being perceived? These are all things that are just common, no matter where you are in your journey. And so I think recognizing that as somebody who is leading people is heartening, I think, for me. And I hope it's heartening for other people as well to realize that it's not unique. If you're concerned with how you're doing, I think that's how you're going to improve best.
Ben, tell my audience a little bit more about how Parafoil builds intelligent workflows. What is an intelligent workflow in layman's terms? And how does it help to scale content creation? And when it comes to leaders, how do they understand how AI is reshaping the future of the work that they're doing right now?
Yeah. I mean, if you're a leader and you're not encountering AI in your work, then you probably aren't looking hard enough. I think there's a lot of leaders who probably haven't spent as much time playing with the tools yet as they could do. And so hopefully everyone who cares about leadership at this point has at least an LLM plus account of some kind, whether it's Claude, GPT, whether they're working with, with Gemini, whichever the tools they're choosing to work with. Hopefully they are building an understanding of how to use AI as a thought partner, how to use AI as a tool to brainstorm. It's a useful additional thing to be able to use, just like we all learned how to use the spreadsheet, I'm sure 40, 50 years ago, before yours and my time. But, Parafoil is meant to be an extension beyond that. So Parafoil is really about leadership. It's dedicated, to the task of helping you improve as a leader. It is a tool for improving a manager's leadership. So it analyzes how you lead in every meeting, and it gives you tailored advice after every conversation you have with your team for improvement. And then it charts your progress day by day. So you get an understanding of how you did after every conversation. And then you build a picture with Parafoil of how you're doing as a leader. And it measures some of the key things that are really important in leadership. How much are you creating clarity with your team? How good are the feedback moments that you're giving and receiving from your team? How good is the alignment between you and your team? These are all things that are really important and historically have been really hard to measure. But now we're able to measure those things because we have the power of compute. And so we're building Parafoil just to make that way, way easier and put that kind of telemetry, that kind of intelligence in the hands of everyone who chooses to lead. If you're a runner these days, you probably use Strava or one of these tools. If you're somebody who cares about your quantified self and you're thinking about the quality of your rest, maybe you wear an Oura ring or a watch. There's lots of different ways you can start to measure how you're doing. As Peter Drucker said, that which measured gets managed. And so we are helping people measure and understand and build a better understanding of their own perception as leaders in the workplace.
So how exactly does it work then? Because you said it takes everything that you do. So are you wearing something around your neck that just hears everything that both you are saying and the people that you're in meetings with? How does it all work together so that it could dump the information and what sounds like almost being a leadership consultant that's with you all day?
Yeah, it's like having a co-pilot or something with you all day saying, hey, this is how I'm doing from a leadership perspective. Yeah, I think there's a lot of companies that are working on hardware, pendants, things you'll wear, watches, all these things. I think will that hardware game is going to play out. And I think that will be a component of our story in the future, but I don't think we're going to be building hardware. Parafoil at the moment is an app that you install on your desktop and will soon be an app that you can run on your phone too. And you can either throw it down on the desk in the meeting room that you're having a conversation with one of your peers or one of your direct reports, or you can set it up so that every time you've got a one-to-one with one of your team, Parafoil springs into action and analyzes that conversation for you. So it runs in your menu bar on your desktop. And so it's all set. You have complete control over when it's recording, what it's recording, whether it keeps the recording or not. All those things are part of the way that Parafoil is set up. So it puts control completely in the hands of the individual manager. And then the manager seeks consent, obviously, with the person that they're working with. And then the two of you recognize that you're having a conversation that will be analyzed by a machine. So no humans obviously are looking at the content. And then right afterwards, you get an alert. So you might get a Slack message or an email. Most people choose email. The email is like a report of how the conversation went. What were the hot points? What were the cool points? some advice for how you might do better. Parafoil is really focused on actionable advice. So it shares with you some actionable tips and ideas for how you can do better. Behind Parafoil, behind the scenes, so that's the workflow. Behind Parafoil, behind the scenes, is a really powerful AI engine that has been fine-tuned for leadership development. In fact, we believe it's the only AI that's been fine-tuned for leadership development out there. And so the entire token window is fine-tuned with behavioral science, cognitive science, believe it or not, early childhood psychology, which is the foundation of all leadership styles, and a whole load of leadership development, books and sort of manuals and all these things as reference for the AI. And then the AI helps you by pulling all of that stuff out at the moment that it needs to. So we've got a giant vector database that kind of pulls all that stuff out and serves you the right information at the right time.
So can you talk to me about a practical example, a story of a leader that uses Parafoil and saw the changes in his or her interactions in the way that they led others?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you about an example last week that I had when I was using Parafoil. It's always best to talk about your own examples sometimes. I mean, I can talk to you about one that happened with one of our customers. But for me, I was having a conversation with it wasn't a direct report, but it was somebody who I regard as an advisor of mine. They're somebody I trust very much. They're very, very well-seasoned senior product manager who really understands how to build fantastic products and has built some of the most well-known products that all of us use every day. And I was having a conversation with him about Parafoil and where we're going and what we're doing next. And, as somebody who's got a lot of wisdom and expertise, he immediately came in and shared a lot of ideas for where we might go next and what we might do. And I'm somebody who has spent a lot of time trying to be good at receiving feedback. But his feedback was pretty tough. He was saying to me, look, I really think you really need to change this and you should do this. And here's some things you should make different. And he was talking about sort of the way that we're building the data narrative in Parafoil. And, we spent a lot of time trying to get that right. And at the end of the conversation, I was like, how did that conversation go? I was sort of left scratching my head and wondering. And then 4 minutes later, the Parafoil summary arrived. And I was clicking through the meeting. You get a real-time view of what's going on. And I was clicking through, and about the third balloon in, I was looking and thinking, wow. And it said to me, instead of being a little defensive, maybe consider how you might look at this person's feedback. I'm not going to name this person's feedback, and start to shape the way you respond to their feedback in a way that acknowledges it. And I thought, and so I immediately cut and paste that, and I sent it to him, and I was like, hey, I'm really sorry if I was a little defensive there. And, he was very gracious and wrote back and was like, you weren't defensive at all. I mean, I think that was a relationship building moment for both of us. He was very kind. I got myself off the hook, which I think, I probably could have handled that better. Let's be honest.
Sure.
But at the end of it, it helped me reach the epiphany that I wasn't able to reach myself, and I needed the mirror. I needed the reflection. I'm sure there are people who have a more refined sense of self-awareness that would have got there themselves. I'm on a journey to develop that self-awareness. I'm not sure I've necessarily always got it to hand. And so in that moment, I didn't have it, and I felt like I was being criticized. And I spoke to another friend about it, and we looked back at the transcript a little bit because it was obviously my transcript. And he was like, I don't think you were being defensive at all. And I was like, I don't know. I think it's on the line here. And so there's some slightly different consensus here in terms of whether or not I was actually defensive. But that isn't really the point. I suppose the point is now this person who was giving me advice, and I now have a much better relationship as a result of it, because I was given the opportunity to go back and say, hey, listen, if I was being defensive, I apologize. And he was very gracious about it. And I think he now knows that I'm in search of my own self-awareness. And I think that probably has helped to build a better relationship between the two of us, I suppose.
Yeah. Which is probably why you have this person speaking into your life, because that's the way a good advisor would advise. So I think, all that goes into these leadership conversations that we have with one another. When you were talking, Ben, I was thinking, man, sometimes as a leader, I don't want to look in the mirror, because we can all say, we want constructive criticism. Of course, that's what good leaders say. Oh yeah, I love but when it comes down to it, we all get a little bit defensive because we're human. And so what fears do you see leaders facing around AI adoption? Because this is something that's going to cause us to be even more introspective. And when we identify these fears, how can we address them responsibly and confidently so we can become better leaders?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there are definitely times when I'm not ready to look in the mirror. And I guess, with Parafoil, it is at least an option. I can choose whether or not I'm choosing to look at the post-match report if you like. But I think in the advent of AI, we are finding ourselves with a choice, right? Do we want to automate our way out of our own humanity, which I think a lot of people feel is the biggest opportunity in AI? We could create a more agentic workflow, which means we can automate more. We can focus on the things that matter. I think some of that stuff will happen. I also think those of us who work in tech have a bias towards doing that because in some ways we're avoiding ourselves. We're avoiding our own emotions. We're avoiding our ability to really deal with what really actually matters in a bigger way in business than automation and greater efficiency. Greater efficiency will happen regardless. That stuff just plays out. You can participate in that. That's fine. Like Parafoil is designed to make you able to manage more, lead more, do more, of course. But it's also about sort of confronting the realities of your own self, because I think this weird sort of almost singularity moment is the moment where we have to sort of start to say, do we also want to improve the inevitability of the people that we're leading, the relationships with the people that we're leading at work? Because if yesterday I had 5 direct reports, in tomorrow's world, I have 20 direct reports because, everyone's getting flatter and flatter teams and we're leading more people, and it's becoming a tougher and tougher environment out there for managers. And so that just puts the onus on each one of us to be able to understand, like to the point, the conversation we're having at the beginning, each one of those people is their own individual person with their own story and their own work and their own expertise and their own thoughts and all the things they've come to work with today. It's only going to become more important in my opinion, in the AI era, for us to be able to connect with the people that we are leading better, to be able to understand ourselves better, and to know that the human component, which is inevitable in a company. I mean, I'm sure there's a future where there's an entirely robot company that's run by bots, but it's going to be very difficult for those companies to be able to exhibit the kind of judgment and empathy that they need to be able to build products for people, I imagine. So I think it's going to be, it's a reckoning moment for us. It's a reckoning moment for us to be able to say, are we going to try and move ourselves out of the picture, or are we going to be people who, are we going to be focused on trying to make sure that the time we do spend in the picture is better spent? And I think that's what really matters right now. It's about understanding how to do that better so that we can be more effective, so that we can get more done, so that we can move faster, so that we can be more efficient, so that we can build the emotional resilience and the psychological safety and all the things we need to be able to make fast decisions in really time-pressing moments. I'm sure you and I have both been, I was in the newsroom for many years. You and I have both been in moments where a decision needs to be made in a split second. You don't really have the benefit of being able to prevaricate a lot. AI is an opportunity for us to be able to either automate that decision, or for those of us who have very big ethical concerns about what might happen there, again, in the context that you and I have both worked in, those are very real, to be able to make decisions fast, in a human way, and understand like what the impact is and the consequences and what we're doing. And that's something that I think AI is going to help us do. It's going to empower us to be able to make those decisions better, in a more informed, hopefully faster, more psych-safe way.
Yeah. Speaking of quick decisions, big decisions, you've mentored creators, executives, people that have a great weight. And when I think of leadership, I think of taking on more responsibility, making life better for others. What do you think today's emerging leaders are missing or need to understand better?
I mean, I have a lot of empathy for anybody who chooses to take the path to leadership today. I think it's harder than it has ever been. The sheer noise of what's going on is greater than it's ever been. You've got senior leaders who are having to deal with all sorts of, elements of the work that didn't exist before, like building public personas when they're much earlier in their career than they used to be. Social media, that the pressures of the workplace are much more multidimensional in terms of the things you need to be the things you need to be thinking about. The geopolitical climate is so much more complex than it was, 10, 15 years ago. And that just creates, I think, more complexity, even in the workplace. In the US, it's a much more complex, place to live for me than I feel like it was 10 years ago when I first moved here. And so, I think leadership is getting harder and noise is getting greater. And no one is feeling that more than the front line, like the early career leaders, the people who've just chosen to step in because, one, it's new. Two, they're the lightning rods for the entirety of leadership bearing down on them inside an organization, right? They've got everyone from CEO to senior manager and director is like, you need to lead. and and then they're leading ICs who are doing the work.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks, right, to be in that role
Right.
sometimes. And so I have full empathy, in fact, maybe more empathy for what I think is probably emerging to be one of the hardest jobs in the company, which is to be a frontline leader of non-leaders inside the company. I think it's the hardest place to be. You have none of the privilege and all of the work. You're trying to play player coach. I mean, it's really difficult. So, my you know, my belief is that decision making has to change. We have to become more augmented. We have to be more thoughtful about how we approach that. And I think we have to recognize that there's a pretty significant seismic shift going on for everyone in that environment. And so we need new tools. And I'm not just talking about Parafoil. We need like a whole bunch of new tools, I think, in this era. And so often tools and the way culture sort of approaches these things, the way we think about sort of the culture of our work doesn't always keep up with the reality that people are dealing with. And so I think maybe there's a conversation we need to have together. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation actually, Mo. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a conversation we need to have together to be able to like really understand like what's going on here, like how's it going? And I guess that's what your podcast is all about. So it's important for us to be able to engage in this kind of discourse.
Yeah. When building teams for the future, because I'm always thinking about what does it take to continue to build my team, to build great teams? And AI is definitely a part of that. And so, are there any changes that need to be done to the hiring process as AI becomes more integrated into workflows?
I think there's a lot of changes that people are making in the hiring process because AI now exists. I'm not sure all of them are good ones. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been, there's a lot of people who are looking for work at the moment, right? At least that's my experience. When I scan across LinkedIn, I do see that. And it's always the case. There's people who are looking for work in one context or another. But the advice seems to be changing a lot in terms of how, as a candidate, you need to look for work. I've seen videos on how you significantly shift the structure of your resume to be able to be more appealing to the AI tools that people are using to crawl resumes now. And so we're sort of in this weird new dance where the machines are sort of not quite finished. And so everyone's trying to
Right.
adapt. Do you remember the early days of search engines? I don't know. I mean,
I
you
do.
look very,
Yeah.
very youthful, Mo. I can't.
Thank you.
But in the early days of search engines, we had all these search engines like Ask Jeeves and other ones like that, which were a little more. I don't want to denigrate the founders of Ask Jeeves. I'm sure they were pioneers of their time, but they were a little more primitive in terms of how you had to ask questions, right? You had to sort of almost like write the Boolean search queries. Like you had to
Right.
you had to kind of know a little bit like how the machine was thinking. And I think that's what we're in that kind of an era now a little bit with things like AI resume tools and that kind of stuff. I don't have confidence that some of these tools are sufficiently crawling people's resumes in a way that means that they're getting the best people for the jobs. And I don't necessarily have confidence that the way people are applying for jobs in good faith is necessarily in service of serving the AI or serving the fact that they think they're the best fit for the role. I think I have full empathy for the people who are doing the job too. Recruiting is super hard. That pyramid is really wide, right? We're in an
Yeah.
information scape. The information scape now is so crazy. Like I assume for like one small role somewhere in the corner of a company, you're probably getting dozens and dozens, if not, tens of thousands of applicants in some cases for certain roles because they are so, well profiled. And if you're getting that many applicants, how are you supposed to sift through them? How are you supposed to find the right person? It's really hard. So I do recognize that it's getting harder for everyone, not just the candidates, but also the recruiters. And I think we're all going to have to work out a way to do better on the way in.
Is that something that Parafoil does when you guys have to vet in the hiring process? Does it start that early or do you have to be on the team?
Yeah, I would love to say we do everything, but actually in the context of the work we're doing right now, Parafoil is most effective when a leader chooses to work with their team and employs Parafoil to help them. And so if you're already leading a team or you're about to be leading a team, whether it's 2 people, 1 person or 100 people or more, then Parafoil is really there to help you with the folks you're already working with. I believe there are tools out there that are working on solving the pain around the sort of interview recruitment space. In fact, I've even seen tools which do the kind of talking head bot interview. I don't know if you've seen those things, but like you can turn up to an interview and then it's not a human being there, it's non-human
Yeah.
on the other end. And, sort of giving you the
Yes.
HAL 9000 act when you're trying to when you're trying to have a conversation with someone about your future. I'm here to talk about my future. Well, I'm a robot and I don't care.
Right.
Like it's kind of tricky that. So
Yeah.
there are companies that are solving it that way. And I think there are companies that are probably solving it in a much more humanistic way, I suppose.
Yeah, that's definitely a shift. I know I've talked with people who have shown up for an interview and it's an AI bot, whether on video call or audio. And some people don't like it because they don't feel valued. And I think that's something that companies need to figure out what they're going to do, because obviously as leaders, we want our people to feel valued. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good point, Mo. Like if you turn up right and you're going to commit 45, 50, 70 more hours of your week for the next 5-10 years of your life to this company. And like, this is the first moment you're encountering the company. It's a really important like brand moment. It's a really important employee moment. It's an important leadership moment. I mean, it's so foundational in the quality of the culture of the organization, right? And for you to rock up and for there to be, they've not bothered to put somebody on the other end to be able to talk to you. I kind of think, well, is that really respecting my time and my energy? You know, it seems a little disrespectful. Now, I'm sure we're all going to have to get used to it. And
Right.
there's going to be like, we've all done the informational conversation where you sort of talk to somebody who is just there to give you the kind of the download on what the company's all about and that kind of stuff. And that's usually like the 30-minute opening conversation that you have with somebody. Maybe it's a sort of a recruiter who's a bit earlier in their career too, or something like that. I suppose those conversations can be done by a robot. I suppose I also question whether or not we need a robot at all for that. Like I could have just read that on a page. Like, send me the PDF. So yeah, I don't know if it's a signal that I would want to give. I mean, we're building an AI company. I don't think we're going to use those tools to hire. And that doesn't mean I get to meet every candidate as we continue to grow. But I do think that we need to be respectful of people's time. And maybe it's just a question of interviewing less people.
Yeah. Ben, what's next for you? What's next for Parafoil? What can we,
Thanks, Mo. Yeah, we're building the mobile app. At the moment, Parafoil works on your desktop, which is great for remote teams, but in person, not so great. And so the mobile app is going to help you just put the Parafoil app down in the room, and it'll analyze the conversation you're having. We're about to finish all of the information security SOC 2 protocols to make sure that we are safe, secure, and anyone can use us safe in their knowledge that the way we handle your information is very, very careful. We're a privacy first company. And then we're focused on how do we help you work with more of your leadership output? One-to-ones and group meetings are great, but there's so much leadership that happens in other contexts like Slack and email and other places too. So we really want to make sure you get a full 360-degree picture of how you're doing as a leader. And that means helping you plug in all the different corners of areas where you may be working with and leading people, and also giving you more space to reflect and grow. So, we're on a journey. We're building and growing, but it's an exciting one to be on. This mission to help early career leaders and to support them to be the best they can be is something I'm really personally passionate about and committed to. And so I hope it's one we can enjoy for many years to come.
Ben, where can my audience connect with you, find you, see what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn at Perreau, but I think the most important URL probably for today is parafoil.co. So if you go to parafoil.co, you can see the evolution of Parafoil firsthand. If you're excited, sign up. We're doing an intro deal right now. But yeah, that's where most of the action is going to happen over the course of the next few months. It's at parafoil.co. Thanks, Mo.
Awesome. This is such an intriguing conversation because of where AI is going, and the leaders that I talk to, my friends, my clients, everybody's wondering what's next for AI. So thank you for sharing your knowledge on this, Ben. You definitely are a pioneer. And as a leader, I appreciate what you're doing in the leadership space for the leaders of today, emerging leaders, those that are coming behind us, about people. And I'm glad to know that you are doing this with your team. So I appreciate it. For my audience, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with somebody who needs to hear it. Sign up for our newsletter. It's free. We give you all the good stuff. Until next time, Ben, I hope to have you on again. Appreciate it, brother.
Thanks, Mo.
All right.